Hello, and welcome to the Gemini New Moon forecast. I'm looking forward to sharing this with you. Gemini is my sign, so it always has a strong correlation to me. So it's always useful to remember that there will be certain archetypes that will resonate with you more strongly. So for me, it's not just Gemini. I have a lot of placements in other archetypes that therefore makes those archetypes quite prevalent for me. But whenever there's a lunation in a sign that is strong for me, like Gemini, then I can feel the Gemini in me getting triggered in all her glory. So some of it is not so great, some of it is great, and it gives me that opportunity to look holistically at the archetype of Gemini in me. And you will also see certain themes that'll start coming up again. So maybe every Gemini season you are full of ideas and creative expression. Maybe you don't get anything done because you're phoning a friend every 5 seconds to natter. What are your Gemini themes? If you carry that archetype very strongly, so if you have planets and placements in Gemini, you may find that it exacerbates a part of you that you already have. However, let's say for a moment you don't have much Gemini in your chart or even much air in your chart. When the energy is in that sign, you may have access. Let's say you're a very watery person, and when you're struggling with life, as most waters do, they retract. They cannot express themselves in that moment. So for people who don't understand that, they might be saying, tell me what's wrong, speak to me. How can I help you if I don't understand what's going on? But your water person isn't trying to irritate you. They literally cannot express themselves until they have words for that. Right now, it's all emotion. I'm feeling it. I don't even know how to deal with it in myself yet, let alone to break it down in language to you. So let's say somebody like that hits the air sign season and suddenly they find words that they wouldn't have had a few days before or usually. And so this is another way that you can use the rhythms and cycles of the archetypal season. So sun in the time that sun is traveling through Gemini for a month, or in the new moon of Gemini for the next month as well. So the sun, by the time we have this new moon, has already been in Gemini for a few days, like a week. Let's say the chart. And then I will explain that to you. So the sun moves 1 degree a day. So if we're looking at this chart at 6 degrees, the sun is at 6 degrees Gemini, then we know it's been Gemini season for 6 days by the time we have our Gemini new moon. Now, there are times where that Gemini new moon falls on the 28th degree, which would be the sun's 28th day in Gemini. And therefore, we almost get like a double cycle or an elongated cycle to experience that Gemini energy. This year, because the sun will have been in Gemini for like a week before the new moon, and then we have the new moon, we will have almost like a 5-week Gemini season, so to speak, if we look at the sun and the moon, okay? So sun and moon are always together in the sky when it's new moon. Always. That's what a new moon is. The sun and moon come together. That's why the moon is in shadow, because the sun is so bright that he takes away from her light. When it's full moon, 2 weeks later, the sun and moon are opposite each other and she is reflecting the light of the sun. So that's why she's full. And understanding your moon phases and the moon phase that you're born into is all very fascinating stuff. Hit me up if you're interested to learn more. In the meantime, also please remember that I do this chart for where I live. So this is a Taurus rising chart. It may not be that for you, wherever in the world you live. So rather focus on the planets and where they are, the themes that I tell you, and then look at where that is in your chart. So if I'm speaking to you about Gemini here, don't say, oh, well, Gemini looks to be in the first, second house kind of area. Rather go, where is Gemini in my chart? So I'm going to take that and I'm going to say, well, 6 degrees of Gemini in my chart is in the 10th house. So I'm going to be able to apply it to 10th house topics. This new moon for me will fall in my 10th house. Therefore, 10th house topics of career, reputation, visibility, etc., will be prevalent for me as a theme for the month. Okay, if it landed in your fifth house, maybe again, creative projects and endeavors, maybe hobbies, maybe romance is in the air, maybe you go do something really, really fun with your children, fifth house topics. Okay, so it's looking where this falls in your chart. The forecast that I give you is a reading of the energy of that new moon. But how do you personalize it? You take it to your own chart. I'm very much thinking about starting up a new Starry Studies group, which is where every month we do a little sort of snapshot of a piece of astrology, learning things systematically, slowly, applying it to our own chart, so that cumulatively over time, you start to realize how much you've absorbed. Again, message me if that's something that interests you. Okay, so let's have a look at this moon. As you can see, the new moon is falling at 6 degrees of Gemini, so early in Gemini, with Mercury coming up behind. So Mercury is the ruler of Gemini. So Mercury rules this lunation because it's in Gemini, and because he's at home in his own sign, he's extra strong. So that is definitely going to mean, and he's very close to this new moon as well. I mean, they're conjunct. So that is going to mean that the Gemini stuff and the mercurial stuff is going to be really extra. So Gemini can really have a bit of an ADHD kind of vibe. It's the twins, it's an air sign, it's dualistic, it's about communication, it's about here, there, and everywhere. Add Mercury himself in that sign when he's really whippy and zippy. I mean, the symbols for Mercury, or Hermes in Greek mythology, is the winged sandals and the helmet with the little feathers as well. So it's going to be busy. Let's just put on your roller skates, put on your winged sandals, and be prepared to whip and zip like a lunatic from idea to social gathering to work projects, multitasking like a demon. And maybe things are slipping through the cracks because you're swirling and whirling a little bit excessively. So also because anytime we're dealing with air, it's very nervous system-y. You know, it has us a little bit breathless and busy. And so we need to remember to ground. Now, when we get into Gemini season, we're coming off the back of a really embodied, grounded Taurus season. And Taurus is slow and steady wins the race. Take time to rest and relax. Enjoy good food, good wine, you know, whatever it is that brings you pleasure in a slow, steady, embodied kind of way. And sometimes when we get to the end of a season, we're kind of like a bit like kind of over that now. So you might have found by the end of Taurus season, you were feeling a little too stuck, a little too sedentary, a little too much as if I just can't get over this sort of hump. And now Gemini season comes in and bam, suddenly you are all over the place. It feels like time is accelerated. It feels sometimes like you've had 2 days in one, or you're in two places at once, or whatever the case may be. And that can feel kind of overwhelming when you've been in this lull, in this slow, you know, and then suddenly it's super fast. What tends to happen is we get a little whipped up a lot of the time and we forget to ground and we forget to breathe. And I mean, this is a problem for me always. Like I was explaining to you in the beginning of this, how to apply that to yourself. I know that that's something that I need to be consciously aware of always, because I am a Gemini and that is true for me. So in Gemini season, I need an extra dose of meditation, an extra dose of getting out in nature, to be extra conscious of all those spaces that dysregulate my nervous system and get me feeling scatterbrained, breathless, overwhelmed, any of those places. I need to recognize that starting to happen in my body and in my mind, and I need to find ways to come down to earth. So that is true for you, whether you're a Gemini or not. This is a season you want to do this. If you have a lot of air in your chart, or indeed a lot of Gemini, you need to do it extra. But you also then have extra access to the gifts of the sign when you are very heavy in Gemini or air and the energy is focused in the sign. Your ideas might really be popping. I would recommend writing them down, because you're not going to remember the ideas at the velocity that they're coming at you. So write them down. You don't need to attend to them all during the month of Gemini. Write them down and you can come back in another slow season. So basically, busy, busy, busy Gemini. Look at where the first decan, which is the first 10 degrees of Gemini, is in your chart, and realize that that's the place where this energy is really going to be infused most strongly. We also have Uranus in the final degrees of Taurus. So Uranus takes 7 years in a sign. That is 7 years of breakdown, breakthrough, pulling apart. And because Uranus is a lightning bolt and he's fast and he's quick and he's been in slow and steady Taurus, you might find that you have spent the last 7 years breaking down, breaking through some of your more stubborn spaces that you didn't want to be moved in. I mean, literally, there have been so many like earthquakes and things that have been earth shaking and quaking type of scenarios on planet Earth, and those things also within each of us. So as Uranus moves in the direction of Gemini, which I can't remember exactly when he moves in, but it's not going to be long now because he's at 27 from this new moon, 27 degrees and 49 minutes. So he's basically at 28 degrees. And there's the signs go up to 29 degrees. And then, although there are 30 degrees in a sign, we start the count with 0 degrees. So it's 0 to 29. So he's got 2 degrees to go, and then he's going to step into Gemini. And that is going to be a double whammy. So what we're feeling at this new moon is going to have this extra push when Uranus enters the sign of Gemini, because he's coming in there with his lightning bolts and he wants you to think bigger. Uranus is very much like higher ideals and paradigm shifts. And when we enter a very intellectual, imaginal, creative sign like Gemini, that's going to blow us open. So Gemini is mutable. Taurus is fixed. So with Uranus in a fixed sign, Uranus was like bash, 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 trying to like break through the Taurus rigidity and fixity. He's not going to have to work that hard with Gemini for us to recognize those things. So the changes are going to feel quick and intense and quite frankly, I'm pretty sure overwhelming. You might already be feeling it, but you're going to feel it extra when he enters. And at that point, which is literally, I would say within the week, shall we look? Let's look. I'll show you how you look. Go into AstroSeek. Go to ephemeris tables. Okay, we're in May. Let's look for Uranus, who is currently here. Okay, we're scrolling down. Okay, he's moving in June, early June. So we're going to just jump across. Sorry, I am doing this fast. So if you're trying to follow, this is a little fast. Okay, so we go to June. We see here's the glyph for Uranus. Scroll down until we see his enter into Gemini. Oh, is it early July? Sorry, he's a slow mover. Okay. So I think it's maybe the 6th or 7th of July. I actually have looked this up before. 8th of July, he moves. Okay, so back to our chart. So at this lunation, we're getting a taste. When Uranus moves in there, he's going to come and bring back, remind you everything that's going on now. So it feels really important, sorry, for you to take cognizance of the ideas, of the bright sparks. Like I say, write them down, because you might find that when Uranus enters Gemini, suddenly you're like, what was that thing I was going to do again? Damn, it was a great idea. That was the big thing. That was my next big thing. And I didn't write it down and I can't remember what it is. So in order to avoid that, write everything down, little points, and you can come back if you need to. Okay, what's also happening here is that Gemini is about to lose his benefic Jupiter. Jupiter is currently at almost 27 degrees of Gemini, and Jupiter spends a year in a sign, and he's been in Gemini for the better part of a year, and he will be moving out. Now, what's interesting here, just to come back to how to bring this to your chart, is that I have my sun at 26 degrees of Gemini. So when I see that, I go, okay, at this new moon, Jupiter is on my sun. How can I use that? That's like super lucky. That's not something that happens very often. It happens once every 12 years. And this is going to be happening. So I can do several things. I can look back to what happened 12 years ago when Jupiter was on my sun, and I can say, okay, what sort of things were going on for me there? Where was my luck lying? And I look in my chart where it's 26 degrees and my sun is in the 11th house. What are 11th house topics? How can I infuse some luck and generosity and all of that, maybe expanded belief systems, Jupiter's belief systems, into me and who I am, because the sun is your soul's light, your greatest purpose, how you're meant to shine. And so I might take that and do something. Well, I personally will, but you might take that and do a little something with it if you see something like that. Okay. But then not too long after this, actually, we'll look it up so I can reinforce what we just did. So now we come back. Remember, we're in July now. We want to look for Jupiter, who looks a bit like a 24. But now already in the beginning of July, we can see Jupiter's in Cancer. So let's go back to June. And at the beginning of June, he's still in Gemini. So we're going to scroll down, and here on the 10th of June, he's going to shift into Cancer. Okay. So for anybody who has strong Gemini, this is the last hurrah of Jupiter in Gemini for 12 years. So what is it that you want to follow through with that maybe was like a big leap of faith? Because Jupiter is also faith, belief systems, ideals in some ways, along with Neptune. So what is it that you want to do? This is like you've got the lucky elixir. So how do you use it? For those people who are Cancer, the sign that Jupiter is coming to your sign for the next year on the 10th of June. So that is also super exciting. Okay, so that's something to really watch here, that in this new moon, we are having the last little bit of Jupiter in Gemini and the last little bit of Uranus in Taurus. Okay, then Mars is now, he's done such a big excavation here. Was it to 9 degrees of Leo? I can't quite remember. But anyway, the last degrees of Taurus, Cancer, and the first degrees of Leo was where we had this big retrograde. And he's still within the same sign, one of his retrograding signs, but he's moving forward now and he's getting a little bit of momentum. So you might just want to look at like how forward movement is working for you. Of course, by this Jupiter, goodness, by this Gemini new moon, you will find things are moving faster, but a lot of it will be mental. Mars is like, how do I get there? How do I do it? Like, go now. The whistle goes and you start running the race. Like, it's not just an intellectual idea. Gemini can be very much just the intellectual idea, but Mars is going to help push us into that with the Leo, going to help move us forward. Okay, things that you're passionate about, because Leo being fire is like really going to bring in the passion. Okay, so that is important little note on that. And then we want to have a look here where we have been speaking for the last multiple months about how we've had so much transitioning between the last degrees of Pisces into the first degrees of Aries. The nodes moved backwards from Aries to Pisces. Now, we've already had Neptune step in at the point of this, at the point of this lunation. Neptune is at close to 2 degrees of the sign. I think he only gets to 3 before he stations retrograde and goes back into Pisces for a little while. What's also very exciting is that we have Saturn having just entered a new sign. Now, it's quite a big deal when Saturn moves signs. He only moves signs every 2.5 years. Some of the outer planets, like the modern planets, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, they take much, much longer. But in effect, they're kind of like transpersonal planets. But Saturn, although he's not a personal planet, sometimes we call him a gas giant, the work that he does is about mastery and effort put in over time and the structures of our life. And so we have this 28 to 29 year cycle of Saturn. And in that cycle, we're doing the work in those archetypes for 2.5 years, which is a lot more of a manageable bite-sized chunk than 7 years in a sign or more for the further out planets. I mean, we've spoken about this multiple times, but Pluto, who's recently come into Aquarius, is going to spend 20 years here. So it's really hard for you to go, oh, well, during my Pluto journey, it's going to take you 20 years to recognize what Pluto and Aquarius meant for you. But Saturn is enough time and process to sort of have to work with it, not quick fix, which Gemini likes quick fix, okay? And of course, this is a Gemini lunation we're talking about. So Gemini likes quick, but there are processes that the faster signs like Gemini need to recognize take time. Now, interestingly, Saturn has moved into Aries, which is probably the quickest fix because it's the baby of the zodiac. It's the match. Strike it, flares up. If you don't do something with that flame, it goes out just as quickly. It's very easily triggered into excitement, into anger, into movement, into passion, all of these things. It's ruled by Mars. And here's Mars in Leo in another fire sign. But at this point of this lunation, Saturn has just entered. And I got to say, Saturn's not going to love this sign. But he didn't love the sign he was in before either. He's not a huge fan of being deep under the emotional waters of Pisces, which we've experienced for the last few years. Sorry, I've had a bit of a tickle all day. And he is not a fan. He's a far out cold planet. He doesn't really like getting his feet hot. And now it's almost like he's got to walk over the coals to get to the next sign, which is much more structured in a way that he probably will feel a lot more comfortable in 2.5-ish years when he gets to Taurus. But right now, he stepped into Aries, and this is about the structures of me, the mastery of me, because Aries is me first. Aries is I need to, I must, I can, I should, I will. Aries is an I. All fire has that I, but Aries is I quick fix. Aries will start the race before the gun goes or the whistle blows, and then have a false start, and then not care because winning is more important. So this is about individuating into yourself. So for those of us who have been very pleaser personalities or insecure about who we are, or anything where you feel like you haven't been allowed to shine, the cosmic curriculum is saying to you, now you need to step up. Now you need to focus on who you are. And for the people who have already been a little bit like grandiose or narcissistic or me, it might get louder, but that might become problematic because Saturn's there. And Saturn can be punitive if we're not doing the work. So if you've been undervaluing yourself, underrating yourself, not backing yourself, you're going to get kicked out of the nest and being told to fly. And if you've been extra and you've been bullying and you've been too much, Saturn's going to force you out of that door as well. So generally speaking, Saturn can really be our friend because I feel like Saturn really wants you to do well. He's like that headmaster that wants you to thrive. But if you're not towing the line, if you're breaking too many rules, if you're not studying for your tests, that headmaster's job is to call you out, is to punish you. And the choice is yours. So for me, it's like, where is Aries in my chart? That's the work I must know that I need to do for the next few years with that Aries feel and that Saturn feel and the same house that it is in my chart. We also have Venus at this lunation coming up to Chiron. So she also did that big retrograde process. Hers was between these signs of Pisces and Aries. And as she moves towards the tail end of Aries now, which is something that Mercury was doing not so long ago, where after his retrograde as well, where he said, I've been thinking about this differently now. And so a lot of this is reiterating Saturn going into that sign. We've already had shades of what that will be for us because of all the things that are moving into Aries. Neptune's move into Aries, the retrogrades of Mercury and Venus in that space. It's been forcing us to look at what cycles need to end, Pisces, and where do I need to step up, Aries? Where do I need to be a warrior, a pioneer for what I believe in? And where do I need to drop deep into my emotional intelligence, Pisces, and take that with me so that, because Aries can be super competitive, it could be all about winning, but we don't really want that. So can we take the wisdom of what we've learned through Pisces, and then, like, how can we take that collective consciousness of Pisces and go into the individual, but want us all to win, which is that collective. Pisces wants everybody to be a winner. Aries wants me, I, me, mine. So how do we integrate the two? Because they have very different energies. And we might really look at this when Venus comes to meet Chiron, because Chiron is the wound. Venus is our values, that muse-like energy, talks about how we want to love and be loved. And so as we hit the wounding space, we ask ourselves, where has humanity been wounded by this dog eat dog world, top down power? I don't care what I have to do to win the race or to get to the top of the mountain. If I have to step on how many people on my route to the winner's podium, so be it. I don't care who gets hurt as long as I get what I want. Where has that in our society just become so dysfunctional that Venus says, I don't love this anymore. This is not how I want to live my life. I don't value these traits in myself and in others. And so therefore we begin to make the changes. So again, we've had so much change happening already for the last few years. And this, I feel really excited about this particular new moon, because I feel like a lot of the things that we were waiting to begin to happen are already happening. And some of them we're still waiting for. And this is a slow process. This is a slow process. Some things are happening. We'll have these little hurry up and wait moments. And this is going to give us a little accelerated portal to feel like, okay, I've got some momentum, I've got some ideas, but at the same time to remember it's a big picture. It's a big process. I mean, we're literally developing a new earth. We are becoming new. We are reprogramming, and it's happening at such a expansive level, at such a cellular level. We can't even conceptualize of what's happening. That caterpillar has no idea when he's a tiny caterpillar and he's eating and eating and eating and eating and eating until he's humongous, and then he ends up compulsively spinning himself into a chrysalis, maybe because it's like he's got a tummy ache and he just wants to like hide in that chrysalis. He has no idea at that point what he is becoming. He doesn't know that he's about to completely dissolve and disintegrate, and that in time he will break out of this comfort blanket that becomes a prison and actually turn into a completely different creature, one that can fly. And Gemini is a great archetype. Butterfly is a great archetype for the Gemini archetype too. So right now, you are possibly in that really fat caterpillar state where you feel like you need a security blanket. Maybe you're in the chrysalis. Maybe you're dissolving. Maybe everything feels upside down and topsy-turvy. Maybe you're trying to break your way out of the chrysalis and you're not quite sure. You don't even know that you're different now until you get out, until you break through with those wings, until you give them the time to dry, until you spread them and realize you can fly. So I hope this has been helpful. Sending you lots of exciting ideas over this Gemini moon and for the entire Gemini lunation and Gemini season. And happy birthday or happy solar return to all you Geminis out there. I look forward to sharing another forecast with you for the next full moon.